So, without further ado, I'm going to bring up Carrie and we will introduce her. Hi, Carrie.
Hello.
How are you?
I'm all right. I'm going to just apologize in advance for whatever background noise we might get from my dog.
Oh, it's
She just
fine.
found her favorite squeaky toy, so you might hear some squeaking.
Yes, I love it. It's gonna be great. It'll be like maybe it'll happen at really appropriate times, like at a rising crescendo of your talk, and be really great. But yes, so Carrie is the head of content strategy relations here at Sanity. And she is going to talk to us about content strategy and sort of what questions developers need to ask for their content platform to fully support its users and its content. Again, if you have any questions, be sure to put them in the chat. We will have a Q&A afterwards. Otherwise, let me add your slides. There we go. All right. Are you ready, Carrie?
I'm ready, I think. We'll
Okay.
see.
All right. Take it away. All right. I'll see you in just a little bit.
All right, thanks.
You're welcome.
All right. So, yeah, we're going to talk about something a little bit different than the last few things and what we usually talk about on these meetups. We're not going to talk about code or building studios. Well, kind of, we'll talk about that a little bit. But we're going to talk about what you're creating your code and your studios and your projects for in the first place to support content. After all, Sanity is a content platform. So before we get started, though, I want to take a little poll. I think Lo is putting this question in the Slack channel, so you can go on over there and answer. So the question is, how often are your projects late because of content? And you can just use the number emojis to answer, or the number reactions to answer. Since I don't think we have a proper polling way to do this. So if you can just take a few seconds to answer this, and I have a guess on how it will pan out, but we'll see. This is also not the first time I have done this poll. So if it doesn't turn out the way I think, I will be surprised. And maybe you're a special audience. But so far, it's, I know not a whole lot of people have answered, but it's going about the way I would expect, with most people answering 3 or 4. And I'm pretty sure Anna is not going to be one who answers that because of how she just answered that question. So yeah, for most people, it's more than half the time. And for a lot of people, it's every single time. And I used to be like that too, and I didn't like it. And luckily, the team that I worked with also didn't like it. We worked at a small agency about 10 years ago, and we developed a way to put content earlier in the process, and that's what you'll see a lot of today. I was really fortunate to work with really smart and curious developers and designers, so that we could develop this together. And it's also not just you. It's really everyone. I did this poll at a UX camp a few years ago, asked people, okay, on the left side, put your sticky where content comes in your process now. And you'll notice we got a lot of LOLs. Because there's no content in their process. And then I said, okay, and then also on the right side, put it where you want it to come. And so you can see there's a big difference. And that is why most of you answered 3 or 4 on that question before. So the good news is that there is a solution to this problem, and I'm going to share it with you today. So I ask you to listen with an open mind. Please know that any examples I might give are used without judgment. We're all looking forward to how we can do things better for ourselves, for our colleagues, for our organizations, and the people we serve with our work, i.e., the audiences of the people who go to our websites or use our apps or whatever it is. And the secret to all of this is content strategy. So there are whole books written on what content strategy is and how to put it in practice. And if you're interested in that, please do check them out. I've listed a bunch of books and websites where you can get more information about all different sides of content strategy. But today we'll talk about how content strategy applies to your work as developers and how you can ask for what you need to do your best work. So just a few definitions to make sure we're all aligned. Content strategy is a plan to get the right information to the right people at the right time to meet their needs and organizational goals. So this is a big intersection of things, and it's a big thing. But it's planning, and it's not content itself. Content itself is the information, the substantive information that's expressed: text, videos, images, document files, all audio files, all these different ways of expressing information. And you may have also heard of content design, which I hear often conflated with content strategy, and they are not the same. Content design is less abstract, and it's taking content and determining how it works on a page or within a template based on user needs. So it's very close to UX design, if you're familiar with that, user experience design. But it is more focused on the content than just the things on the page or the flow. And here's the thing: content strategists don't really have many answers, but we ask a lot of questions. And if you do ask us questions, our answer is probably, 87% of the time likely to be, it depends. And that's because there is no right answer. There is no one-size-fits-all answer to any content strategy question, except for, should I use click here or learn more as link text? And the answer is no, never. Nope, don't ever do that. So here are questions that should be asked that are part of a content strategy. If you're doing content strategy, it doesn't have to be anything formal. You just have to ask this series of questions. Why does this need to exist? And this meaning the thing you're building, not this page, not this field, not this content model, but the whole thing. And if no one can answer that question satisfactorily, maybe you need to stop and figure out why. And because there could be something that already exists that can do exactly what needs to be done, and you should work on that instead. But often there is a real reason for a product to exist. And so then you can go on to the next question. Who is this for? Who are we building this for? Is it for yourself, your client, your organization, your team, or is it your audience? That's the best answer. It's for a group of people who need to do something. But if you don't have a clearly defined target audience for the thing you're creating, it might be a vanity project, and that is probably not going to turn out really well. But let's say you do have a well-defined target audience. So then you can start turning inward. Who will be creating and managing the content? Unfortunately, as you may have experienced, this question often comes last. And that's the main reason most digital projects are delayed or turn out less than good, because no one knows who is responsible for the content or what content needs to be there in the first place. So determine right away who is responsible for the content. And it doesn't have to be one person. It can be this, it could be Donna is responsible for our media content, and Bob is responsible for our event content, and so on. But someone has to be responsible for each piece of content. And make sure they know it and are part of the process from the start. And then once you figure that out, the next logical question is, what is the content going to be? You know who you're doing, why you're doing this, who it's for, and who's going to oversee the content creation and maintenance. Then you can do the research to see what matters to your audience and meet their goals. And that's the content design aspect of this. Then you can ask, where will this content be delivered? It could be a single website, could be multiple websites, an app. It's going to show up on Google, probably on Facebook, maybe on an Amazon Echo device, all of the above, more, less, who knows? The idea is to make informed decision, not just the first thing someone thinks of. So then you have to think about the future. When we launch a site, everything is just so, but we must ask from the start, when will this need to be updated? Because content changes almost immediately. So you have to plan for the frequency and types of change that will happen, so you can accommodate for that without reworking the code or updating the design constantly. Your content team will hate that if, as soon as they ask for a change, it requires development and design work. So make sure authors can make the updates without bothering you or breaking the design. And just to go back to what Anna said, she works with, she talked about working with the people who maintain the content from the start, and that's the best way forward. You can't make assumptions or guess. And then you think even farther in advance and ask, how will things change over time? Can you build now for what might happen later? Think back about how often current viewports change. Look back 2 years, 5 years. How much has changed in that time? What would you have done differently if you knew in 2019 what you know today? Now look ahead and plan for what's next. What can you do now to make what you build today viable in 2023, in 2025? Think standards and semantics. Those things haven't changed. They just aren't used often enough, and they aren't likely to change, but they will be used more as technology advances. At least I hope so. So when you get all of these questions answered, now you can design connected content. And by design, I mean to plan and make decisions about something that is being created or built, not the visual design. We do not start with visual design. So designing is to plan, and content, a connected content, or not a connected content, is content that connects to other content, either within the same product or to other things, to other products. You might have an e-commerce system, you might have a CRM, you might have a bunch of different databases that hold different types of content. They should all connect together, and to all your users. That's the end user, the person who's maintaining the content as well. So that's the end user of Sanity, and then the end user of the product itself. And the good news is Sanity is designed exactly to do this. So how do we do this? I co-wrote a book by this name, Designing Connected Content, 4 years ago. And many people have talked about how it's changed how they work with content and content technology. And I've also been a consultant for a long time before I came to Sanity. And that gave me a big opportunity to work with many different people and many different organizations on doing the things in using this framework and iterating on the process each time. So some of the stuff that I'm going to talk about later, I'm not going to go into detail. We don't have enough time, but it will hopefully get you started. So in software design, we have the DRY principle, the don't repeat yourself. We want to avoid duplication in logic, and we do that by eliminating via abstraction, and we want to eliminate duplication in process via automation. Duplicate code adds technical debt. Duplicate content creates risk, editorial debt, and degrades the customer experience. So we want to create frameworks rather than single-use things. Similarly, Brad Frost's Atomic Design is a similar framework where you start with the smallest parts, put them together in bigger and more complex ways, and you can make design systems, and a lot of people are doing that today. And you can also do this with structured content. This allows you to work at any scale. We start by creating models to represent our subject area and content resources. Then we figure out how to fill up that model. And from there, you can create lots of different ways for that content to show up. And then all the pathways through the content via various navigation structures. And it's not a vertical in that one person works in there. It is a multidisciplinary vertical where design, development, writing, marketing, business, product management, and more need to work together. And if you're a one-person show or building side projects, you must incorporate those content strategy questions into your discovery and kickoff work. But if you work with a team of people as a developer, you won't be the one asking those questions, let alone being the one who figures out the answers. But having them will go a long way towards allowing you to make the best decisions about how to set up your studio so that the content lake has the appropriate data and relationships and allows you to build many different interfaces that connect with a user in a meaningful way. So this is a typical way of working on a project. Say we're going to do a website. People start with a content audit, create a sitemap, then there's some wireframes, and we do the visual design, then we build the CMS, and then we create the content. Well, we all know how that goes. It ends up going in circles over and over, and we do that endlessly. So it's time to break the cycle and rearrange those steps, where we start with modeling and look forward and create a vision for the content overall that can include multiple endpoints, or start with one for now, but leave open that possibility. It does not cost more or add more time. It just rearranges your budget and timeline. And it really works. One of the foremost experts in structured content in building this way, Karen McGrain, tweeted recently about a client of hers who did this. They were able to completely rebrand without rebuilding everything. So it really does work. So content model is used in Sanity in one way, and I am talking about content modeling in this case as not a schema in your studio, but as a boxes and arrows representation of the types of content and their relationships. And when you start here and doing it as a group exercise, you get off on a better start. You might avoid building too much that doesn't work. You can try things out in ways that make sense for everyone who needs to know how the content is going to work. So after the model is done, the strategist can then work on the content audit to map against the model instead of just rearranging what usually happens by looking at analytics and content quality. And now the fun part can begin. You can start building something by doing the content design. So content design with structured content means that you take the pieces from the model, organizing them in a way that makes sense for delivery. And theoretically, you can do this for each content type without having an interface in mind. But to be super realistic, you likely have a website in mind when you're doing this. This is an example of the tool I use to do this. It's called a content spec sheet, which is just a detailed outline of the content structure for a content type or a web page. Now you've done that. So it's a thinking piece. That spec sheet is a thinking piece. And so now you can do the build. I've developed a way to identify as a content person how I want my content management system built. So I've created this build worksheet that allows me to start specifying things so that I can work asynchronously with developers, but it's also super awesome to work together with a developer like Knut and I have been doing for a project. You can even watch one of our sessions here to see the kinds of questions and questions I have and discussions that we have while we're building. And this actually happens to be our conference content, our structured content conference website. We started out with a conference content model, and now we have an event content model so that we can use it for all future Sanity events and not just a conference. So while the studio is being built and we enter sample content right away, we can start rendering all the fields to an endpoint and make a prototype. And then we can do all of these things in parallel, the content creation, the visual design, and the navigation, so that nothing is really waiting for the other. But since everybody's working at the same time, communication is key. You can work asynchronously. You don't have to have all these meetings to do all this, but you have to talk to each other and let each other know what changes come up. And then you're ready to go. So what does this all mean? To wrap up, start with why. This why provides a strategy for everything else. Know what content you're supporting, measure twice, cut once. It always depends. Make deliberate decisions at every step of the way. Have patience. This is going to be a change if you start doing things this way, and change takes time, but always put progress over perfection. Content strategy is better for the business. Content can work harder. People can find your content better. You have better return on investment. It's better for your team because everyone is working on the same priorities, and you can take advantage of people's expertise where it matters, not just what do you think about this design. And it encourages real, true collaboration. It's also better for the web. It was made to connect things. So take it from Tim Berners-Lee and don't start with a mess, start with a clean system. So these are the resources that you can find for more information. The things on the left are books, the things on the right are websites, and we'll share these slides afterwards so you can see all of this again and follow any of these links. And that is it. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Carrie. That was fantastic. So let me see if are there any questions from the chat? Let me see. If not, I have a couple of questions. So there were lots of remarks, and I know you just shared some resources about the content spec sheet and that build spreadsheet. Are there specific resources where people can go to see examples of that? like blank ones at least to see how you structured those, or is that something that you created as your own personal tool?
So those are things I have created. At various points, I have made them available as templates. I haven't made the latest iterations available, but I do plan to. I just didn't get a chance to do that before this meetup. But when I do, I will let everyone know in the Slack community that they're ready.
Fantastic. That, because I didn't get a chance to look at it. I'll look at it when you share the slides. But that spreadsheet looked really awesome. I was like, oh, it's fantastic. We do have one question from Ethan. Ethan asked, any thoughts on getting clients to have patience and trust the content modeling process? Ooh.
You know what? So I generally worked with people who came to me and said, we want to do it this way. So I didn't have to convince anyone. But I can also tell you that that was one or two people. And when I would get a bunch of stakeholders around a table to do a model, a lot of them were like, here's what we want on the website. Like, okay, let's go back and just keep asking questions and get them on board and let them know that you want to hear from them. It's having good questions that get to their level of expertise, to ask them what they do, what they need to do their work, and help define that model for the future. What I find is people are skeptical when you start that. And at various points during the modeling session, it clicks, and it clicks at different times for different people. But like they'll say something, I'll say, well, what attributes does this thing have? And they'll start like, well, on our current website, blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, okay, but is that how you want it? And they're like, you mean I can have it differently? So as soon as they're like, oh, well, actually, no, I would want it this way. And then all of a sudden they're like, so just ask questions, involve people, and encourage them to share their vision for the future and their needs. And I find that usually helps.
Awesome. Yeah, because I think it can be sometimes difficult, right? Like working with clients or customers or teams of folks, who are very focused on, what it looks like. What is it going to look like? But I think your point about really sort of asking these questions and asking people questions in relation to what they're expert at, really it's a way to sort of hook people up and engage them with the content modeling process. So that's really awesome that you said that.
Yeah, it's it's kind of counterintuitive sometimes. And I know everybody wants to know what it's going to look like. Yeah. But you got to keep them busy and keep them involved and keep reporting back. Again, that's that communication. Yes. And that helps things. And it doesn't take a long time to do a content model. It really doesn't take a long time, especially if you're just going for boxes and arrows. If you're trying to define the whole schema, yeah, that takes longer. But just boxes and arrows can take a few hours.
Excellent. Okay. Fantastic. Thank you so much again, Carrie. Again, you can find Carrie in the community Slack and also via her Twitter, which I will post in the chat in just a second. Oh, sorry if y'all heard that very loud motorcycle. You were worried about the dog, but I got motorcycles going on over here.
Yeah, she fell asleep, so okay. She's guarding my door.
So let me post. I don't even have any windows open or anything.
Wow, that's very loud then.
Yes. So there is Carrie's Twitter. So you can find her there or, like I said, in our community Slack. But thank you so much, Carrie.
Thanks. Thanks for the opportunity to come.
Always. You're always welcome. All right. We'll see you soon.
All right. Thanks. Bye, everyone.
Bye.